Of course, happy to do so. Hi, everyone. Kristen Hole, Associate Commissioner of Instructional Strategy at the agency. There's a section in the bill focused on the parent portal, and this would require entities or publishers to make all of the materials available for parents so that they can see them. There's some stipulations for how that would happen. They would have to make materials available chronologically. They would have to make materials available, all the teacher guides, all the student guides, so that actually parents could go in and see what is happening in the classrooms for their students. So this would be something new. It's something that isn't currently required, and this bill also sets up a vetting process that the SBOE would put in place to vet all materials. As a part of that vetting process, they would be able to look to see if publishers did meet the requirements of that parent portal. So there's both a requirement for entities and or publishers to stand this up and a vetting process to make sure they do so effectively.
Thank you.
Sorry. I was just going to say this would be for all instructional materials that the SBOE would review as a part of the new SBOE vetting process.
I was curious. I understand in my review of the bill that there's a fiscal note with the bill, but I don't think there's appropriations made. How do you cover a fiscal note without any appropriations?
We also have a resource witness here as well.
All right, we'll wait for that.
Okay, great.
So, does the bill? Does the bill have a portion where a teacher? Does it get into issues like what teachers can teach, not teach, or if they're controversial, that they have to teach two sides of the issue? Does it control whether teachers can teach? They can't incentivize civic engagement. Does it control teacher behavior?
The bill creates a vetting process run by the state board that is required to do a certain set of things. It's required to look for standards coverage. It's required to assess a certain set of materials for quality. It's required to assess materials for suitability. And then it's also required to check that materials are aligned to that parent portal that we were just referencing. So the SBOE would approve both rubrics and a process to evaluate those materials that would be present in the Texas market. No school would ever be required to use any of the materials vetted through that process. It would still be a local school district's choice in terms of what they would select to use for their teachers and for their local needs.
Passes quickly.
Madam Chair,
Senator West.
you said Highland Park is using a system that was not approved by the State Board of Education.
It's an app. I don't know. It's a system.
And what's an app? What's the name of the app?
Quaver Education. Quaver Ed.
And it's being paid for by.
TEA. Subsidizing it. And
No.
And I'd ask, do we have TEA representatives here? Y'all are normally over in that corner. Okay. All right. I'd like to get some information.
Ms. Hull.
This information right here, I need to know whether or not.
Okay.
Okay, you've heard what was said. Do you have anything that you can shed on that?
I've not heard of Quaver Ed, so if that's something that the agency has purchased, we can look further into that. But in terms of the open education
All right,
resources,
Before you go there, would the agency have to purchase that before? Would the agency purchase that, number one, before it was approved by the State Board of Education?
back in 2009, the agency was has statutory authority to purchase open education resources.
Mm-hmm.
In current statute, there is no requirement for the agency to submit those resources to the state board. So with this bill, there is now a requirement that the agency would have to do that.
Okay, so here too, before passage of this bill, the commissioner had the authority to look at it, make a determination, and then decide whether or not to use state resources to purchase it.
Correct. He had the authority to purchase open education resources.
Okay, very good. And secondly, in terms of Fort Worth, you heard one of the witnesses talked about Fort Worth and the use of Amplify in Fort Worth. Are you familiar with the usage of that in Fort Worth?
We don't collect local data from
So you're not-
districts,
so
so
you're
we
not
wouldn't be
familiar?
able to comment on Fort Worth's data if they were reporting on local data from local assessments.
No, I'm talking, you don't collect any information on the use of Amplify?
We have had a grant program to support districts in COVID response for those using the open education resources. So we would have a sense of, if a district joined that or not. But if they were conducting local assessments throughout the year, we would not have that data.
So there's no assessment as to whether or not Amplify is working or not?
Local districts conduct local assessments to
Well,
determine.
I understand all that.
Great.
All right. The point I'm asking you is, TA appears to be recommending Amplify. Am I correct or am I wrong about that?
We have a set of open education
That's not-
resources.
Hold on. If you don't understand the question, I'll rephrase it, okay? Is TA recommending the use of Amplify? Yes or no?
So we have procured underlying content from Amplify that we now own, but it is distinct from Amplify. So that is what I was going to clarify. We do believe in, we want to make a high quality open education resource, but that is not Amplify. We procured content that we then have continuously improved and developed, and that is now distinct from Amplify. So Amplify as an organization has a number of products that exist in the private market that they are able, they can continue to sell to districts, but the OER product is now owned by the state, and we can continue to improve it and edit it apart from Amplify.
All right, so is it an Amplify product?
It is a state product now.
Did you purchase it from Amplify?
Some of the underlying content was originally purchased from Amplify, but has since already been revised and will continue to be
So the answer to the
revised
question is yes.
based on feedback. Yes, we did.
Okay.
We did
So as it
receive.
relates to the use of Amplify by school districts, you're saying that we have to go to the various school districts that are using it in order to determine whether or not it was successful. All right. I'm asking TEA to check with Fort Worth to find out whether it was utilized and do the evaluation as to whether or not it was successful. Can you do that for me?
We can definitely
I thought you could. So
talk with Fort Worth
when can you
and
get
see
that
what
done?
they would like to share.
When can you
yes.
get that done?
Thank you, Senator West.
Bob, just hold on.
Thank-
When can you get that done?
Oh, good.
I can check back with the team. We can check with Fort Worth and see what they're willing to share, but they're not required to share with us local assessment data.
Okay. I'd like to get the answer tomorrow, if all possible. That's what I'm talking about. That makes no sense at all.
And so I just want to ask, so
That makes no sense at all.
Amplify, you extracted some things from Amplify, modified them, changed them up, and you use them at different schools, or they're part of curriculum?
So whenever
What did y'all do with them? When you took them out, extracted, changed, what'd you do with it then? Because
Yes, ma'am.
under this bill, there has to be permission, or we have to know what the TEA is doing,
we
where before we didn't.
the way the process worked is we had an open competitive solicitation. We had 23 vendors response, and we awarded 6 contracts related to open education resources. That's how we procured and acquired the underlying content. Once we obtained that content, we took it through an extensive and very rapid vetting process, because this was during the time of COVID, so it was very quick. To support districts in getting access to materials as quickly as possible. But we went through a vetting process, and as part of that vetting process, we looked for TEKS coverage.
So let me just make sure I'm following. So extracted the material, changed it, had a bidding process, 6 vendors, and then they built onto the platform that y'all had.
We started
The
with
core that you extracted and changed up. Did that become the platform then for the 6 vendors, or the vendors that you chose or that won the bid?
Once we completed the RFP process, that content was then owned by the state. So once we owned that content, we reviewed it and continued to edit it over time. So we edited it, we revised it, and then we put that product up on the website for anyone to access to meet the open education resource requirement, in that all of the material is digitally accessible for free to anybody in the state to reuse and or modify as needed for their local context. Over time, we have continued to obtain feedback from our pilot districts and have continued to edit that product. And the most current version is online that anybody could access right now, just going to the website.
Interface with vendors that you,
It's on the TA website. You can go to the TA website and look at it.
okay, thank you. Senator Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you all being here. Just from a TEA perspective, understand what you've done with Amplify, the bidding process we just described, that you've extracted some of the data. Now it's different, so to speak, than base Amplify, so to speak. You took the content, you extracted it out. What is the nomenclature? What do you refer to this as now within TEA? Have you given it another name other than Amplify within the TEA world? If you can elaborate on that for us, we'd understand how it's referenced internally when you talk about these types of curriculum matters.
Thanks for your question. We generally think about a set of open education resources, and we think about it as subject area and grade band. So we would say TEA has a state-owned reading language arts kindergarten through fifth grade product, because we do see our product as distinct from what Amplify has. And we, in the purchasing of the underlying content, can edit it and adapt it however TEA needs to support the feedback we're getting from parents and from educators in Texas.
So you don't brand it as Amplify, just to be clear. Is that right?
The COVID response version is branded as Amplify, but we have been intending to rebrand, so the version that we put in front of the State Board of Education. We would like the State Board to be able to review that product.
And would it be possible for TEA to provide for members of the committee side-by-side comparison of base Amplify versus the Texas version now that you're referencing, just to kind of see at a code level and a content level, side-by-side comparison what that looks like? Would that be possible?
We can definitely look into that.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wow, we've heard Amplify a lot today, haven't we? Question would be, I guess, what do you envision? You said that there was a bidding process. There were several bidders, and then you evaluated them, I'm sure. And I'm not sure. Did you select the low bid, or did you select best qualification? How did you evaluate who to purchase the $50 million worth of product? And that's the other thing. I don't know exactly what we purchased. I mean, what did we get?
Question.
Well, may I interrupt 1 second? Meg, I think we're finished with you as a witness, but thank you so much. We'll ask the resource witnesses to stay while we finish asking questions. Thank you.
It's so unfortunate that you don't ask the end users. It's really unfortunate.
Thank you, Meg.
Because we're the end users, and I can answer all these questions very
Thank you.
differently. I was in a meeting with Moran.
Meg, thank you.
The material wasn't vetted.
Meg, thank
He
you.
said that himself.
Thank you. Go ahead and finish.
Okay,
Terrible.
well, I mean, you know what? We don't need to answer all of these questions here, but my concern is moving forward. If this bill were to pass, what would the process be? Who would be involved? And how do we make sure that, we've been down a similar road in years past, maybe 10 years ago. I think it was called C-Scope, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And I remember then Senator Patrick was opposed to this. I'm just curious. I just want to make sure that we don't spend a lot of money on something that we're all going to be saying, well, why did we do that? So I'll stop my questions for now. Thank you.
I just want to ask a question. Does this contain Common Core?
It is.
The open education resources that we develop, we do vet them to ensure they're aligned with the TEKS.
So do they contain the Common Core?
The materials that we are building are TEKS aligned. They are not Common Core aligned.
They have critical race theory in it?
the materials that we are building, we do want to comply with the law of SB3. So, and what this bill does, it provides a state board vetting process to
Okay.
ensure that they would meet those criteria.
Thank you. Senator Spring, Chairman.
Madam Chair, I was just going to, Senator Menendez exited, but I was just going to say that through some of the history that I have related to Amplify, as we've talked about how it came to be used over the last couple of years, it was an RFP during COVID put out to 30 different vendors that supply this instructional material curriculum type development, certainly assistance to teachers in classrooms for a specific Texas product. Out of the 30, 26 responded to the RFP. 6 were chosen. Since pieces of Amplify was purchased by TEA and modified based on opening up, complete review for those that have used it and experienced it, especially, to all Texans. Those reviews came in, and then that evolution took place on that public sentiment feedback from Texas use and review of the programs as they were modified. So there's been a history over the past couple of years of where it started out in an RFP, how many vendors were approached, how many responded to the RFP. 6 different vendors were contracted with, and then pieces of it was purchased based on success and taken from there, if that helps. Yeah.
Senators, thank you. Senator Springer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to sort of build on the chairman's comments there, so let me make sure I'm clear. So is Amplify the base platform that is utilized, then content stacked on it from Amplify as well as other vendors?
It's not a platform, it's content. So we purchase some base content from Amplify, so a set of lesson plans, unit plans, and then we have been able to adapt those as we've continued to provide open education resources to districts. That content now lives on the TEA website, and as a part of the bill, that content would live on an OER repository, but it's not
So it's just
a platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it, so you wouldn't hit third grade and, okay, this is third grade, here's my third grade reading. They would go through this as just a bunch of PDFs or type of things you're clicking on
Right.
building?
Right. So you can click on the PDFs. Many districts in our pilot print the actual teacher guides and student books, and then there's a set of trade books, actual books that go with the units. And so
there were 6 vendors that provided this content?
yes, 6 vendors were awarded the RFP across.
What percentage was Amplify?
I don't have that number
If
off
you
the top
could
of my
get
head.
that to me, that would help.
Yes.
But, and then you mentioned that they're able to edit it. Are they able to edit then what lives on the TEA website, or are they just able to edit it themselves?
You can go to the. It's about the license. So the license allows for anybody to take that content and modify it or use it however they would want to in their local
But nobody else
context.
sees what they modified.
Correct. So you as a district could take that content, edit it, and change it, and that would be okay with the license that we have
And
procured.
how do we assure then it meets TEA's high quality standards then? Because you approved it, but then we go to something else.
The product that we have posted publicly would, if the bill passed, would go through a vetting process. But districts have always been able to determine locally what they use, and if they choose to use that locally, then they would do that. And they would have to certify that they meet 100% of the standards themselves, but it's up to them as to how they would do that.
Okay, and they certify. How do you audit those?
A school district by statute is required to certify that they meet 100% of the standards, but they have flexibility in terms of how they do that.
But do you audit those? Or you just trust the certification?
Right now, they submit that they certify, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. And I look forward to seeing that percentage fairly quickly. Thank you.